according to places like Wikipedia, which is probably not the best, source of information. Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is my second week video, and today I'll be reflecting a bit on what I've learned in class today. And I will also be sharing some additional links that I think will be super related to today's subject. Okay, so let's go. So this week is the second week and we are learning about new media and technology. Now first we look into the idea of IT and also ICT. Now what's the difference? Basically IT is information technology, which is any type of technology having to do with relating information, managing it or preparing it. ICT on the other hand refers still to technology but more in a communication sense. It's important to note that IT is more of an industry thing, while ICT is actually more related to academic. Now let's look at the idea of the 21st century. Let's first clarify what is the 21st century. The 21st century is a period of time, specifically the 1st of January 2001 to the 31st of December 2100. But to make it easier for the audience to understand, the 21st century typically refers to the century where technology is progressing so fast. It's basically the thing that's on everyone's mind and on everyone's mouth. Now, as I mentioned, the 21st century really has to do with a lot of technology. There's a lot of changes that happen. And because of that, society in general requires a set of skills so that we can actually be effective human beings or citizens in, the 21st century. Elements given critical thinking, collaboration, problem solving, information literacy, so on and so forth. If you do go online, there are lists of sets of skills. I'm actually providing a link. You can actually read about a lot of the 21st century skills. These 21st century skills are so important because without these skills, we won't be able to survive or prosper in this century. Let's look at Malaysia's current pedagogy in the 21st century. Now, according to Dr. Mazli, our Minister of Education, there are 4 general things that our pedagogy should comprise of. These 4 things are: first, a cultivation of student character. That is extremely important. Malaysia used to have an education system where it's more of like study. You need to get an A. But here in our 21st century pedagogy, students must not only be cultivated in terms of academically, but who they are as human beings or citizens of Malaysia. Second, our pedagogy must be equal in both the rural and urban areas. Now, this is extremely important because especially in Malaysia, there's such a huge divide between the rural area and also the urban area. In terms of information received, in terms of the way that teachers are trained, there is such a huge divide because the needs are so different between these two types of society. And in the Malaysian pedagogy, they actually strive to bridge the gap between these two different societies. Next, it is important for learning and teaching to be extremely fun for the kids in the 21st century. The reason for this is because authentic learning is easily done only in a situation where the learner is enjoying what they are learning. So it's important for Malaysian teachers to actually put in the effort to make sure that whatever they are teaching is fun for the students. Lastly, for our pedagogy is that the workload of the teachers is reduced either through assistance or smaller classes. Now, what I'm describing here is the ideal, and I know for a fact that it is not necessarily exactly what is happening in Malaysia. In fact, there are still cases of where teachers have like 40 students in a class. It's understandable because we don't exactly have the type of culture where we have small classes. And in fact, although we have tried for the past couple of years, or well, the past 10 years, 20 years, is already 2020, it's still like a pretty huge problem that teachers face, having a huge class or not having an assistant due to lack of people in the workforce or due to an exorbitant amount of students coming in, that year. Now, since this class is mainly a class for older students, we of course talk about the Industrial Revolution 4.0. Now, what is the Industrial Revolution 4.0? To make it simple, it's basic the digitalization of how the industry works. It is originally started from steam, and then electricity, then computing, and currently it's basically intelligence. When I'm talking about intelligence, I'm speaking in artificial intelligence. It changed things like, for example, work opportunity. It even changed the type of work. It changed the type of products that we are now producing. It changed the types of skills we need as adults in this industry. It completely revolutionized like life, work, everything. Now, in this week's class, I was actually very pleasantly surprised and happy to learn that our government or the Malaysian government has actually put in the effort to actually create programs that will help us in this industry. Here are the examples of some of the programs. The first is ICGPA, or also known as Integrated Cumulative Grade Point Average. Now, basically this is overall grade point average, your GPA. This makes it very easy for people to actually see where they are at each point of the semester. It's the same concept as continuous assessment. This is the result of your assessment, and it's definitely extremely helpful because it will allow for people to see where they are right now and try to improve from that. E-portfolio is a continuous assessment portfolio in which teachers have to fill up online about their students. Then we have the Malaysian English assessment, which is pretty straightforward. It's an assessment for English. And then we have things that are more interesting, like the 2U 2I, which is basically 2 years in the university and 2 years in the industry. We have things such as the CEO faculty program. We also have things such as the APTCI, which is the accreditation of prior experiential learning, MOOC, which is basically an online platform in which students can study and get their notes and things like that. You have things like the MyRanX. You have entrepreneurship programs in which many students actually through this program has created their own business even while studying and then became like very successful business people. And then you have the Rumah community or the community homes for people that who don't necessarily live in urban areas but they want to study in urban areas. You have things like translational research whereby the person can do research while they're studying. And then you have things like gap year. So let's look at my reflections for this week. Now, in terms of the IT and the ICT thing, I've always found it very fascinating that we all always know what ICT is, but then when it comes to being teachers, a lot of us are actually not exposed to the world of ICT. Even a lot of our schools in Malaysia, we don't have the technology that we need, or even if we do, we don't have people who are trained enough. And that's a huge problem. I think that the Malaysian government should concentrate more on creating teachers or developing these skills with the teachers so that they can then give those skills to the students. Now, in terms of learning and skills and all that in the 21st century, I was born in a time where I was basically in the middle. So my first phone was a Nokia. It was huge, and if it hit the ground broke, not the phone, But at the same time, I was also at the age where I was 12 or 13 and had my first smartphone. So it was not a complete surprise for me when I read or when I learned in class that there was a specific skill that needed to be developed so that you can actually function as a person in society. It's not really that surprising. However, I do feel that in the case of Malaysia, we are specifically lacking more into life skills. We do teach things like collaboration and creativity, but there's not much emphasis put on life skills such as cooking and so on. It's not something that's emphasized on, which I think in the 21st century it is extremely important. I believe there was the best of intentions when talking about the pedagogy in Malaysia, but I feel like there is still a lot of structural problems like for example buildings, or even like a societal problem, like people think teachers is a poor man's job or things like that, that needs to be fixed before we can actually have a successful pedagogy that is realistic and similar to one that we want. Now, one thing I found extremely interesting was the effort put in by the government in regards to making sure that we had skills, making sure that graduates from higher education had the skills needed to work in the industry. However, there is one thing that I feel a bit disappointed in, is that things like that are generally not talked about. It is not promoted. It's generally something that is very unknown. Even as someone who comes from an education field, I really didn't know about this because I was, generally in a government school or generally in a private school, and I really didn't know about these opportunities. I feel like these opportunities are amazing, but more exposure definitely needs to happen if these programs are going to become even more successful. Okay guys, let's look at our first material. This one is a PDF entitled Framing Malaysian Higher Education. As you can see here, is from the Ministry of Higher Education. So it basically talks about how the education in Malaysia right now and its relationship to basically the technology age. Now, the thing that I want you to look at is actually chapter 4. Chapter 4, which here will be page 70. Don't worry, this everything will be linked in the description below. This talks specifically about higher education in the 4.0 framework. What I think is extremely interesting about this is if you look at under focus 1 for the future ready curriculum, it talks specifically of all the things that I mentioned earlier. It gives you specific details that will help you better understand all these things. You see, you will have things such as 2U to I, CEO, faculty, ICGPA, mock, Apple, gap year, MEA, my portfolio, and so on. So if we see there's introduction, challenges, and impact created by 4IR, future alternative for Malaysia higher education, way forward for higher education, the 4.0 framework, future proof talent, and then the conclusion. I suggest that you totally read this out because it's very, very interesting, and I think you can definitely gain a lot from reading this. Now, the second thing I want you to look at is actually this particular link. This second link is on the 21st century skills. Now, what I like about this is it's very specific in what are the 21st century skills, but then it becomes even more specific by having categories for it, which is the learning category, the literacy skills, and the life skills. And then after that, when under learning skills, they're even more specific. It's very interesting to look through this particular article, and I suggest that if you really want to know what 21st learning skills that you can give to your students, you definitely look at this link. Now, for the third one is emerging trends in higher pedagogy. Again, all these are in the link, just look at it. Right now, it has many, many chapters, just like the first one. In its chapter 5, it has technology-supported pedagogy in higher education, approaches and trend. It talks about technology and how it plays into the Malaysian education system. So I think that's very, very interesting. Okay, guys, that's basically it. I realized I forgot to film a conclusion to my video, so I'm doing it here on screen. Thank you for watching my reflection. Thank you for basically listening to everything I have to say. I hope you have a great day.